As summer turns into fall, medical experts are sounding the alarm for those with asthma to brace for potential flare-ups. This week marks Asthma Peak Week, a time when the weather changes. Shifts in pollen levels and other factors contribute to asthma symptoms and even attacks. So it's important to take precaution. Here with some tips, Dr. Asif Khan with the Asthma and Allergy Center. Doctor, thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
So with the warmer temperatures and the dry conditions that we've been experiencing the past few weeks, how are those conditions affecting people with asthma?
So it's interesting. Last week, apparently there was a huge number of people in this general area that experienced asthma-like symptoms, correct? So wheezing, shortness of breath. But the real point that we should try to glean from all that is asthma is essentially a reactive disease. It's reacting to something. And in this particular case, it's triggered. And that's the word that we use for asthma for the most part. And last week it was pretty bad in terms of the pollen that was out. You're right about what you were saying. The pollen count was probably one of the highest in all of September last week. And we did see a lot of patients in the office for that.
Would you say that tends to trigger the flare-ups? Is that the most common thing, or is there anything else?
Well, it changes, right? So in March, we see an increase in tree pollen. Everybody's going outside, it's nicer. And in the winter, if we wanted to talk about indoor allergens, we have pets, we have dust and things like that. So again, asthma is essentially a reactive disease. There's very few people that have we call it intrinsic asthma. They could be sitting in a sterile environment and literally go south. Most of the times you're gonna have a trigger though.
What makes this time of the year especially challenging for asthma sufferers?
That's a really good question because this time of the year we usually don't see this much dryness. There hasn't been rain for some time, and if there has been, it's very little. And what that does is allows certain plants to grow very well, okay, and one of them happens to be weeds. And this is the weed season, and that was the actual pollen there's a number of weeds that grow in this area, but we saw those numbers creep up quite a bit last week.
What advice do you have for people with asthma or other respiratory issues to help them kind of manage their symptoms during times like this?
Be really cognizant of what is triggering your asthma. If you notice it happening in certain situations, write it down. I wake up in the morning after I get dressed. I play with my pets. I go outside. I have the windows open at night. I could sit here for 10 minutes and tell you all the different ways. Once you figure out those patterns, then you have to say to yourself, do I have to go see somebody for those types of triggers? Maybe it's an allergist, maybe it's somebody else, a pulmonologist. And then from there, you'll probably get a good idea of where to go.
What about people who are suffering from seasonal allergies? Has this been a rough stretch for them too?
It has been. Seasonal allergies is one of those things where, and if you know, it's actually really good because you can prepare for it, right? So if you know your summers are bad, you start preparing in the spring. So you start taking your over-the-counters. We're talking antihistamines, nasal sprays, nasal rinses. The bed sheets need to be changed more frequently. If the windows are open, the pets have to be cleaned a little bit more often, that kind of thing.
Do you have a specific brand that you would recommend to people?
I don't. One of the reasons why is because when they went over the counter for all of our medicines that we used to prescribe with the prescription, now they're all over the counter, which means they probably don't work very well. Does that make sense? Yeah, so basically you're going to have to keep bouncing around and finding another one that works, and then that'll wear off, and then you have to find another one, that kind of thing.
What should people be doing now to prevent asthma or allergy flare-ups?
First of all, recognize it, what the symptoms are: wheezing, shortness of breath, cough, dyspnea, which is difficulty in breathing, nighttime symptoms, those types of things. Once you figure that it might be asthma, then go see somebody for that. You might need an inhaler, you might need allergy testing, you might need allergy shots, immunotherapy.
All right, good tips and advice, Dr. Khan. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.